Joining me now from Miami, Florida, Senator Marco Rubio. Senator, thank you for joining us. Let me ask you a broad question first.
Good morning.
As you know, the 1986 immigration reform has been criticized in hindsight as something that only encouraged undocumented workers to come into the U.S. We went from some 3 million undocumented workers in the Reagan era. They had immigration reform. Now we're dealing with 11 million. What in this bill is going to ensure that that doesn't happen again?
Well, three things. First of all, a universal E-Verify system, which means you won't be able to find a job in the United States if you can't pass that check. Secondly, an entry-exit system. You know, 40% of our illegal immigration are people that enter legally and then they overstay their visas, and we don't really know who they are because, for the most part, we only track when people come in. We don't track even when they leave. And third is real border security, including fencing. And all these three things are going to happen because they are triggers. They are triggers for the green card process that we've described or are laying out in our proposal. That's the incentive to ensure they happen. In essence, for those who are undocumented in this country, not only will they have to wait 10 years, more than 10 years, but they will have to wait until all three of those things are fully implemented. If they're not fully implemented, there will be no green cards awarded, and we think that will be an incentive. We're also going to have a legal immigration system that works. Part of our illegal immigration problem is that we don't have a legal way for people to come here, for example, temporarily to work on a farm. We're going to have that now, and so people aren't going to have to come illegally. It's going to be cheaper and easier to come legally. And so I think all these things working together, none of them by themselves will do the trick, but all of them working together will ensure we never have this problem again.
So my first question on all of that is the president has said in the past that he didn't want the fate of an undocumented worker to be tied to something beyond their control, which would be getting the E-Verify system to work, checking on ports and et cetera to find out who's overstayed their visa, and border security. Do you know that the White House approves of the link that you have here?
Well, they don't, but the problem is we have a bipartisan disagreement because I think a bipartisan group of senators agree that that should be a trigger, and the president disagrees, and hopefully we can pass a bill that has that in there, and if we do, then you'll have a decision to make about whether to sign it or not. But that has to be a part of this. Otherwise, it won't happen. And that we've learned that from experience. You outlined the 86 experience. If we don't do enforcement, if enforcement is not a part of this, and if we don't modernize legal immigration, if we don't do all of these things, then we're going to be right back here in 10 years having this conversation all over again. And that would be the worst possible outcome.
So once you get the E-Verify system up and working for all businesses, once you have sort of quantifiable amounts that you can say, yes, the border is secure, either because there's this much fence or the enforcement shows that it's up or down or whatever measures you set, how long is that going to take and how much money is that going to cost?
Well, first of all, it'll be at least over 10 years because obviously the process doesn't begin immediately. In fact, people can't even start applying for their temporary status until the border plans have been created and funded and they begin to implement.
That's what I mean. How long does that take? Like how long does
well, they have 6 months to create
secure?
Well, obviously, that whole 10-year period is something we're looking at. But here's what happens. If the Department of Homeland Security does not secure the border, does not meet that metrics of 100% awareness and 90% apprehension within the first 5 years, then they lose control of the issue. Then it goes to a border commission made up of people that live and have to deal with the border, and they will take care of that problem, and it'll be funded to ensure that that happens. But here's the bigger point. If you are undocumented here now, if you are illegally in the U.S., you can't even apply for this until these plans are in place and they begin to implement them. And then you're going to have to pay a fine. You're going to have to pay an application fee. You're going to have to pass a background check. And then as all that happens, the only thing you get is a work permit. You don't qualify for any federal benefits, including Obamacare. And you're going to have to prove that you can sustain and support yourself. You can't be a public charge. And you're going to have to be in the system at least 10 years plus. Plus, all these enforcement things happen before we give you access to apply for the legal immigration system. In essence, we're not awarding anybody anything. All we're doing is giving people the opportunity to eventually earn access to our new, improved, and modernized legal immigration system.
So what you're talking about is a 10 to 13-year minimum before you can even get a green card. So my question is, let me take it from the other side. Why bother? If you are in the United States undocumented, but you have been able to somehow secure a Social Security number, you're somehow working, why would you step forward knowing that the next step is unknown when you can take it, when life is okay right now?
Well, life is not okay right now for them. I mean, because they're living in the shadows. They have to hide. They have to lie. They're worried about getting pulled over and deported because they don't have a driver's license. You're going to have a legal status to work in the U.S., to pay your taxes, and to travel to visit your family.
But they can't get that provisional for a while, right? For how long before you can get a provisional work visa?
Well, no. I mean, the process doesn't begin until the plans are in place, and we give the Department of Homeland Security a number of months to come up with that plan. But at the end of the day, people are going to get that legalization if they qualify for it. Some people will not qualify for it. But that's why E-Verify is so important. You won't be able to find a job. Employers are going to now have available to them a legal workforce. There will be no incentive for them, and in fact, strong disincentives for them to ignore E-Verify and hire someone who's undocumented. And you won't be able to find work in the U.S. if you are not legally here. And that's why that E-Verify part of it is so important.
Let me read you something that one of your colleagues, Mike Lee, said about immigration and about his discussions with you. What I told Marco, he was, if we can proceed with this in segments, it would be a lot easier to get it passed, and it would be a lot easier for people like me, people in both houses and both parties, to vote for it. I see no reason why you have to lump everything in one 1,500-page bill and say it's all or nothing. That's from an interview that Senator Lee did with Politico. Is it all or nothing?
No, first of all, that's my preference, too, is to have done that in individual bills. I've argued that in the past. That's not the direction the Senate was headed. And so I made it a decision to try to influence the direction we were headed. But here's what I'm pleased about. We have been, even though it's one bill, it is divided up into segments, just like Senator Lee has advocated for, and so have I. And the fact of the matter is that through our negotiations, we've been able to keep these segments separate from each other. In essence, we haven't had to trade less border security in exchange for a modernized system. We haven't had to make these trade-offs. Now, hopefully that doesn't happen during the amendment process. This is going to be a lengthy process here. For example, if things go according to plan, people are going to have 3 to 4 weeks to read this bill and to analyze it before the first markup session, the first amendment process begins at the committee level. And we're looking forward to see what suggestions our colleagues have to make the product better. But so far, what's been promising about the effort is that though it is one bill, it is actually one bill that's divided up into pieces, the modernization piece, this enforcement piece, and what to do with those who are undocumented. And we've been able to deal with each on their own merits, not having to make trades in order to get something good in exchange for 4 things that are bad. And as long as the product stays that way, it'll be defensible. Unfortunately, if it goes in the opposite direction, it'll be very difficult then to support it.
So a couple of questions out of that. The first is, have you agreed with your 7 colleagues that helped put this bill together that you will stick together when amendments come up that, I guess, the majority of you deem to upset the balance?
Well, first of all, I have principles on immigration reform, and as long as the bill reflects those principles, I'm going to be supportive of it. If it abandons those principles, obviously I can't.
I think there will be a stick with your colleagues on that? I mean, do you all have a all for one, one for all thing?
No, I think we've agreed to protect the principles of the bill. But we haven't agreed to band together to keep anyone from amending it. There are 92 other senators who have their own ideas about immigration reform who, quite frankly, I think can help make this bill better. I mean, 92 minds that have additional thoughts about how to improve this thing. There will also be amendments. We know how politics are played. There will also be amendments that are designed as poison pills to doom the bill. And I'll oppose those if I know that's what they're for. And I look forward to justifying. In essence, there are people that have ideas out there now that used to be my original position on some of these issues. And I'm talking about very hyper-technical issues. And I'll be able to tell them the thought process I went through that led us to the point that we're at right now. And I think I'll be able to justify virtually every single aspect of this bill.
More with Marco Rubio when we return on immigration, guns, and a potential run in 2016.
I'm working on something that may be able to announce it later today.
You have certainly been designated, it seemed, as the face of immigration reform, so insofar as Republicans are concerned. How comfortable are you arguing this with your conservative colleagues? And you point out that very often you've held the positions they still now hold.
Well, first of all, I'm not the self-appointed anything. I've worked on this bill, and I can tell you that I think part of my job is to explain to people what it is we've worked on, try to justify it, and hopefully gain their support. That's what I look forward to doing. I think we have addressed and I have taken into account the concerns that I have and others have about our situation. Look, I am not happy. I am not pleased with. I am not in support of the reality that we have 10 or 11 million people in this country that are undocumented. I wish we didn't have that problem. Quite frankly, the decisions that led to that problem were made when I was in 9th grade. But we do have that problem. We're not talking about bringing in 11 million people undocumented. They are here now. And we have 4 choices. We can leave it the way it is, which is de facto amnesty. We can try to round everybody up and send them back, which I don't think is workable. We can make life miserable for them, that they'll deport themselves. I don't think that works either. Or we can try to address it in a way that's responsible but humane, in a way that isn't unfair to the people that are doing it the right way and doesn't encourage people to do it the wrong way in the future. And that's what I think we've arrived at, and I hope I can convince people that this is the right approach.
And this very out front position that you have, and I wasn't suggesting you're self-appointed, just you seem to be the go-to guy for this Gang of 8. Do you think this would help or hurt Marco Rubio if he perhaps ran for president in 2016?
You know, I haven't even thought about it in that way, and I know it's hard to believe for those of us who live and breathe politics. I haven't. I really haven't. I have a job. My belief has always been that if I do my job and I do my job well, I'll have options and opportunities in the future to do things, whether it's run for re-election, run for something else, or give someone else a chance at public service. And that's how I view this issue. This is a serious problem in Florida. We have, I don't know how many millions of people in Florida that are undocumented. That's a serious problem in America that way.
My time is running out, so I wanted to point out to you that the mayor's coalition that is trying to get stiff gun control out of the U.S. Congress has put out an ad that's running in Florida that says Rubio would, quote, let criminals and the mentally ill get guns without a background check. 91% of Floridians support background checks, but Rubio's presidential ambitions make Florida less safe. Will you support the new Toomey Manchin compromise on expanding background checks to gun shows?
To be fair, I haven't read it, and so I don't like to comment on things I haven't read, but my position on guns is pretty clear. I believe law-abiding people in the United States have a fundamental constitutional right to bear arms, and I believe criminals and dangerous people should not have access to guns.
But
and if there's a law that protects those two things. But in general, the point is that many of these gun laws are ineffective. They don't do those things. They either infringe on the right of law-abiding people and do nothing to keep guns in the hands of dangerous people. And I'm troubled that this whole debate is about guns. It should be about violence. Violence is the problem. Guns are what they're using, but, you know, we had a kid build a bomb in a dorm room here recently. The point is that the fact of the matter is that we have a violence problem in the United States, and we are missing a golden opportunity to have an open, honest, and serious conversation about why it is that we are having these horrific violent acts occurring in our society. Because everyone's focused on passing these laws that have proven ineffective and will prove ineffective in the future. And
finally, I just quickly have to ask you, do you believe the honeymoon trip of Jay-Z and Beyonce to Cuba violated existing rules on U.S. travel there?
Well, I don't know where they went on it. If they didn't violate rule, it exposes the ridiculousness of the laws that we have in place. We are allowing people to travel to Cuba as tourists. They are delivering hard currency to a tyrannical regime who then turns around and uses that to oppress its people. And quite frankly, I think it's hypocritical of the people who took that trip because they didn't go down there and meet with some of the people that are actually in trouble today. There's a rapper in Cuba. There's a hip-hop artist in Cuba who is on a hunger strike and has been persecuted because he has political lyrics in his songs. And I wish they would have met with him. If they really wanted to know what was going on in Cuba, they should have met with some of the people that are suffering there, not simply smoke cigars and taken a stroll down the street.
Senator Marco Rubio, we thank you for your time. One correction from me, that was actually not a honeymoon trip, but an anniversary trip. Thank you so much on guns, on immigration, and on Beyonce and Jay-Z. We appreciate it.
Thank you.